Good morning and welcome to another episode of Gone Fishing on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. And I am happy to report this is not going to be the final episode of the season, as your Miami Marlins are in the 2023 postseason. They took care of business. They finished the season 84-77 officially, but 85-77 in my official record book. So much to get into. Firstly, I do want to just remind you guys to like, comment, and subscribe here on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. So much good stuff happening in Miami sports right now. You have the Marlins making the playoffs, the Dolphins, who are off to a 3-1 start, having a great season so far. The Miami Heat Media Day opening up. The Panthers are in their preseason, getting ready to open up their camp. So much is going on. The Miami Hurricanes are ranked 4-0. They're playing really good football right now. They're just South Florida is the place to be in sports right now. And on October 2nd, let me talk to you guys this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the Marlins, who made the playoffs for the first time in a full season in 20 years. Don't give me that 2020 pandemic playoff berth. This is the real one. The Marlins tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on the road at Philadelphia. Game 1 of the NL Wildcard Series. It'll be Jesus Luzardo versus Zach Wheeler. Going to get into that matchup a little bit later, but I do want to just spend the first part of this podcast just celebrating this team. Talking about. I'm just going to go out there and say that this team deserves this. Throughout the talk of the season, there was, how good is this team really? They were 14 games over at the break. They finished 7 games over. They went 7 games under in the second half. Are the Marlins more of that first half team, or are they more of that second half team? Who are the 2023 Miami Marlins? Are they actually good enough to be a postseason team? And the answer is yes, this team absolutely deserved this. Aside from just the injuries that they've sustained, you're missing Jazz for about 60 games this year, and he actually played a pretty good season, all told. He finishes with 19 homers, 22 steals in 97 games. But he played a really solid center field. He missed 60-something games for you this year. You missed Sandy for a good portion of September. You missed Soler for various parts of the season. But I really, the thing that I want to take people to mostly is even away from the 85-77 record, is I was going through the numbers because I just wanted to see what it looked like. The Marlins went into a really bad swoon coming out of the deadline, or of the All-Star break this year. From July 14th to August 7th, this Marlins team was 5-17, right? But over the course of the rest of the season, you have a 22-game sample size, and then you have a 140-game sample size of what this team is. The rest of the season, this team was 80-60, 20 games over 500. You can hit me with the run differential stuff, but this team just plays better in close games. What can I say? They get blown out, but in close games, they are absolutely competitive with just about anybody, especially in the last 2 or 3 innings of those tight games. I don't know what it is. They just seem to hit well in those clutch spots. And then you look at okay, well, what can this team do once they get to the postseason? This team was, like I said, for the vast majority of the season, they were very, very good. You take a 22-game stretch in which they go 5-17, which almost derailed the entire season. They got in kind of by the skin of their teeth. But number one, they're in. And number two, I absolutely, call me crazy, I still think even down Sandy, even down Yuri, even with a hobbled Arise, I think he's going to be playing in this wild card series upcoming. I don't know how it's going to look, if he's going to be a DH, if he's going to be in the field, what that's going to look like. But I do think that this team has kind of a pretty solid mix, that, not to say that they're going to just out talent everyone that they play, because I don't think that they're the most talented team in the playoffs. Far from it. But I do think that they've got guys that are kind of ignitable. And if you get guys hot, who knows what can happen? If you get a guy like Soler, who, October was made for those guys that are just ignitable and go on these week or 2 week long stretches where you hit like 6 home runs in 10 games. And Jorge Soler is absolutely that guy that can do that for you. They have a few guys that can do that. You have a Rise who, while maybe he can't hit 6 home runs in 10 games, he can hit 700. He can hit 700 average over the course of 10 games. You have Jazz, who is extremely ignitable, gives you that base running. He can drop down a bunt in a tight spot. You've got Jake Berger, who's been one of the better hitting third basemen in the league since the Marlins acquired him. You've got Josh Bell, who another guy that's really ignitable. Brian De La Cruz, we've seen what it looks like when he gets hot. Jesus Sanchez, John Birdie, Garrett Hampson, those guys are just nuisances. They get on the base, they create havoc. You need guys like that, especially in the postseason. And I don't want to get expectations too high, but I look at this team and I look at a team that I think is actually suited to be better in October than, the rest of the season. Because this is a team that's battle tested. They played in a lot of these tough games. 6 wins when trailing by 3 or more after the 7th inning, most in the modern era in MLB history. I think Luzardo and Garrett can answer the bell. I don't know about Edward Cabrera just yet. But when he's right, he is as good as you need him to be as your third pitcher in the postseason. I think the bullpen's deep enough. You're not going to have to see Hoeing. You're not going to have to see Soriano. You're probably looking at a bullpen of Chagua, Okert, Nardi, Robertson, Scott, and I think that's Cueto probably is the long man there. And I think that you've got a pretty decent bullpen that can take you through this. Now, I do want to get into a little bit just the specific matchups here because I think it's very, very interesting. You've got Jesus Luzardo in game 1. Jesus Luzardo this year, 10-9 with a 3.63 ERA against Zach Wheeler, 13-6 with a 3.61. Obviously, on the road in Philadelphia is going to be a tough matchup. But Jesus Luzardo is 2-0 against the Phillies this year with a 3.65 ERA to his name at this point. So I do feel pretty good about the matchup there. Braxton Garrett has struggled against Philadelphia. He's 1-0, but he carries a 5.40 ERA. And he's more prone to give up the long ball. And in a ballpark like Citizens Bank Park, I do think that is a little bit of a disadvantage for him. But he does face Aaron Nola, who has struggled against the Marlins throughout this season. Nola 12-12 with a 4.46 ERA. He's an impending free agent. Has kind of had a down year by his standards. So call me crazy. I think the first pitching matchup is even. I think the Marlins actually have the advantage in the second pitching matchup. So I really think that it's going to come down to what will the lineup be able to produce for this ball club. Because I think that they have 2 starters who, when right, can put you in a position to win a game against anybody in baseball. I think Luzardo and Garrett both proved that this year. But it's going to come down to what's the lineup going to do? What is the lineup going to look like? What's the composition going to be of the postseason roster? Will Joey Wendell make the postseason roster? He hadn't really played over the last week or so. Is Xavier Edwards going to be a guy that cuts him off? Personally, I like Edwards a little bit better in the postseason. I know Joey Wendell has the experience and maybe even a better glove at shortstop, but I do think that Edwards being able to play at a few different spots, including in the outfield and maybe being a better pinch runner and just being a little bit better with the bat in his hands than Wendell, I think he just provides a little bit more upside to this ball club over the course of the postseason. And then as the postseason continues, if the Marlins do get beyond Philadelphia, which I don't really even want to get into because I think that that's getting way too far out ahead of yourselves. Yuri Perez obviously went to the IL with that SL joint sprain. It was retroactive to 9/21. So, we're looking at 11 days that it's been. It'll be 12 days by the time the series starts. It'll be 15 days pretty much by the time that the series is up. I don't know where he is in his rehab, if the team is even considering bringing him back, if that's even a thought. Maybe he was put on the IL to, kind of cut into his innings a little bit in case they needed to use him. If they get to the NLDS, I don't necessarily know what the full story is there. I'm hoping he's able to come back, because if you're able to come at any of these teams with a three-man rotation of Yuri, Luzardo, and Garrett, it might not be the best three-man combo that's out there, but I think it's a formidable one, and one that deserves the respect of any team in the postseason. Most certainly. But this team, man, I mean, these guys this year, there were so many times that the fan base wanted to quit on this team, that I wanted to quit on this team. I'm definitely not going to exempt myself from that. I take the blame on it. They've proven all reason wrong throughout the season, time and again. This was a team that looked dead in the water after that 5-17 skid, and they were actually a game under 500 at 66-67. You go 19-10 the rest of the way to finish 85-77 from that point on. The Marlins just got hot when it counted. You got contributions from everyone. Everyone gave you a little bit throughout this streak. I want to give a shout out to Jorge Soler, who's been one of the hottest hitters on the planet since he's come back in September. Hopefully that carries over into October for this ball club. But right now, I think the Marlins are looking at this, and they've got kind of this really stubborn self-belief about them that, I think this team, number one, it's what you need in the postseason. Number two, I think that there's just a little bit of, aside from guys that have been there, done that, like a Yuli Gurriel, or, I don't know really who else has playoff experience, Josh Bell, David Robertson, aside from a few of those guys, and you do need those veterans. The core of this team is made up of guys that generally haven't really tasted a lot of the playoffs. Jorge Soler has tasted the playoffs. They've got a good mix of veteran leadership, but also guys that are just kind of, young and naive about this. They don't know what they don't know, so they kind of don't know any better to be intimidated by the moment. I know Jazz isn't going to be intimidated by the moment. My one concern with him is that he maybe tries to do a little bit too much in the postseason. But I don't think he's I don't think he's a guy that's scared of this moment. Jorge Soler, we've seen him on the biggest stage come through. David Robertson's a guy that we've seen on the big stage come through. This is a team that's they've got a really good mix. You throw out the regular season. It's a new season come postseason. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know how far this team's going to get. But I am confident in this roster. You've got a really deep bullpen. You've got guys that, for the most part, get the bat on the ball. This team doesn't strike out a ton. You've got a few guys that have that strikeout issue. But you've got a lot of guys in this lineup that know how to get the bat on the ball, put the ball in play, make things happen. John Birdie and Garrett Hampson are October players. Those guys are October players. Those are guys that create havoc. They get on base. They force errors. They make the opposing team's pitching tight. These are things that matter come the playoff. It's all about the little things, and the Marlins have a lot of guys that do the little things really well. And I think that's one thing that carries over, especially when you get used to playing a lot of close games, is the close games give you really low margin for error. And the Marlins have, for better or for worse, call it luck, call it clutch, whatever you want to call it. I think that they've done it enough that I can say it's a skill at this point rather than luck. They keep their composure in these close games, in these tight games. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. They get blown out. They come back the next day, and they don't let it carry over. I think that this team is mentally strong enough for the postseason. I think that they do the little things pretty well. I think that they've got a strong enough bullpen. Can the starting pitching hold up? Can the offense provide? I think those are the two main questions. But I look at this team and I say, you know what, 85-77. I don't care that it wasn't pretty getting in. They're in for the first time in 20 years. We're going to be jovial about it. This season's already a roaring success, if you ask me. Even with some of the things that are going on around it, ancillary to it. This ball club deserves to be here. They deserve this moment. And I think that they actually stand a pretty good shot against the Phillies. I really do. Especially looking at these two pitching matchups on paper. I wouldn't say that the Marlins have the advantage, but I would say that it's probably pretty close to even, going both ways. The Phillies obviously have a better offense, but I think the Marlins have pitching that can potentially keep them in check. And I think the Marlins do the little things very well. And that is a really, really strong postseason formula. I'm not making a prediction of a series win. I think that they probably lose to the Phillies in 3 games, because of the fact that the Phillies are just a deeper, more talented team. But this Marlins team has the look of a team that can come in and kind of make some noise in the postseason. They really do. When you look at the mix of what they have, if guys get hot, and some of the peskier guys on the roster, the depth of the bullpen. I'm starting to repeat myself, but it's just one of those things where you look at this ball club and you're like, you know what? Throw away the 85-77 record, and you just look at them on paper and you look at all the numbers, you sift through everything, and you're like, man, this team is just going to be so annoying in the postseason. And when you've got an annoying team in the playoffs, you've got a shot. And so I can't, like I said, I can't say for sure what will happen, but I'm excited to see it. Primetime games tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. starts. The Marlins are going to get a national audience. I cannot wait for one. I can't wait for America to see Jesus Luzardo on a big stage, because he loves those moments. He had 3 starts in September, his last 3 starts. And 2 of them were absolute gems in big moments. He had a rough start in between that, but for the most part, Jesus Luzardo down the stretch in September has been great for this team. Braxton Garrett's been electric for this team over the last 2 months or so. Pitched to a 210, and over his last 10 starts, he's been great. So this is a team that can get in, that are in, that can make some noise. We're going to be following it all throughout. Might even be doing some live streams over the course of the playoffs, maybe some playback. Get that organized with the channel and the guys over at 5 Reasons. But I am as excited as can be over the Marlins getting into the postseason for the first time in 20 years, not counting that 2020 Astros season. 85-77 this year. Skip Schumacher, hats off to him. Hats off to Kim Ng for the deadline additions. Hats off to Bruce Sherman for taking on the salary at the deadline to actually compete and make this season worthwhile. It's been a great year for the Marlins. Hopefully it continues, but we will be covering it here at Gone Fishing on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys next week, hopefully detailing the NLDS for the Miami Marlins. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.